With all the conflicting information and multitude of influencers telling us what we should be doing, what's the best place to start when wanting to improve longevity?
I would say even more important than any supplements or medications or anything out there, honestly, is get your exercise regimen in order, right?
It's crazy. I'll ask that question to a lot of clients because it's just a fun one for me to talk about because obviously we own a gym.
I was going to say.
It's a plug for
Shout
enduraLAB.
But I'll say, hey, I'm going to give you 3 things and you tell me which one is going to affect you long term the most. Exercise, rest, nutrition. Everybody picks nutrition. And I'm like, you're wrong.
Wrong.
Welcome to the enduraLAB podcast. I'm Lee, the owner and head coach here at enduraLAB in Fort Worth, Texas. And as always, joining me today are my co-hosts and amazing coaches, Isis and Jarod. What's going on, guys?
What's up, athletes?
What's up, everybody? Excited for today's conversation.
Absolutely. We have a very special guest, Dr. Kathe Supavong, a physician with a passion for helping people and achieving longevity and vibrant health. She's an active member of the enduraLAB community. She is also Isis and I's doctor. Welcome, Dr. Supavong.
Thanks for having me here.
Of course. Thanks for joining us.
Of course.
I'm excited about this one because today we're diving into what it takes to improve longevity from a medical perspective. It's the reason I really sought you out originally. And we'll also share some personal notes about our own health journeys. And we'll learn more about the services that Dr. Kathe offers and why she calls enduraLAB her fitness home.
Aw.
So let's start with you, Dr. Kathe. Can you share a little bit about your medical background and how it ties into the concept of longevity?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit about my background training. I did my undergrad at UT Austin, and then I went to medical school at LMU DCOM in Tennessee, 4 years there, and then came back and did my family medicine residency at Methodist Charlton in Dallas, and then a year in sports medicine fellowship at JPS here in Fort Worth.
It's amazing. Did you take any high school classes? Like sometimes there's like specialty high schools that.
No, I did. My sister did actually.
Oh, how
but,
funny.
I did not. I actually did not know that I wanted to be a doctor until probably about halfway through college.
What
Which is why
inspired that?
Well, like a bunch of things. Seeing my mom go through health struggles in high school. She has, rheumatoid arthritis. By the time I was 14, she's actually had like double knee replacements. And so seeing her struggle with that, and then her grandfather, or her dad, my grandfather, had a massive stroke, and then eventually died from complications of massive stroke. So just seeing them go through that struggle. Selfishly, I was like, I don't want that life, right?
Right.
Like, so what can I do to help myself, but also help others prevent that from being the outcome?
Yeah, and that is your approach, wouldn't you say, to the way that you do medicine? Like it is mostly preventative.
Oh.
And that is why we came to
Absolutely.
you.
Yep. I mean, how has, I guess from the time that you graduated, going through residencies, obviously, you're a young professional and your views are shaped by the others around you, right?
Mhm.
How has that approach shifted as you've gone through your career?
Well, so after all my training, I went, my first job outside of training was at a small practice just outside of Dallas, a small town called Ferris, Texas, but just 15 minutes outside. And so it was privately run practice for physicians. We did everything. I mean, traditional family medicine stuff, but also Dr. Robert Megna, he is a lipidologist, so board certified lipidologist, so studying in cardiovascular disease, and actually opened up while I was there a cardiometabolic health practice. So I learned a lot through working with him there, but also just honestly, just you learn so much after medical school too. Like you
Mhm.
continue to learn. And actually one of the biggest things that I learned from that time period was just listening to my patients. And it was actually one of my patients that changed my thinking of how I practice medicine. So he brought me a book, Jason Fung's Obesity Code. I don't know if you guys
Mhm.
have
Oh, yeah.
ever
I've heard of
read
that.
that. So,
Mhm.
I read it and I was like, huh, it's interesting. Like I always was taught that diabetes, once you get it and you're on insulin, you can never get off of it because your pancreas is essentially kaput. Not the case.
Right?
Mhm.
Okay. So you can actually reverse it. And I've successfully gotten some of my patients from 50 plus units of insulin that they were doing daily down to none,
Wow.
and controlling their
amazing.
diabetes through utilizing fasting as a tool, along with many other things.
Yeah.
Which is, one of the reasons why people might not know this, being a coach and owner of a gym, but I could not really stand doctors. Right?
Oh, yeah. I remember when you first came to me. Yes.
Yeah, I think Isis had the first appointment, right?
Did I have the first one? Yes, did.
And
Actually,
Mhm.
you came to us. It was super nice.
and I'm sure she told you all kinds of stories, but that was one of the things that I really liked about your approach, and probably the reason why I moved forward with you is obviously I agree that you're going to continuously be learning, and there's so much more data coming out now, and it's faster than it's ever been.
Oh, yeah.
So if you have a medical professional or someone that you're seeing and they're stuck in the past, there's so many new things that's come up, complete shifts in mindset, complete shifts in the way treatments are handled. So I've always appreciated that, obviously, from you, right? And the reason why I finally took the plunge.
Well, I think it's like very similar to enduraLAB in the sense too that we are always learning too, constantly learning and evolving with our clients. I mean, we went from just a run group to then run with Jim to now recovery and VO2 testing ARMA. So it's like we have grown as well in that same aspect. So it only makes sense to partner with you. And it's been exciting to do a lot of experimenting and getting all the data through the testing. That's something I really enjoy. What would you say is the biggest barrier for you when it comes to patients, though? Like they come in, and what do you think is the biggest? I don't know.
I would say maybe, what's the biggest hurdle that you may have to have, like the first hurdle that you have to cross with a lot of patients?
Well,
Other than they don't like doctors, like just period.
I think with anything, right? Change is hard. Anything
Mhm.
that is different from their norm. So a big part of what I do is just assessing where they're at. Family history, gathering info, seeing what their goals are. What is the reason why you are coming to me?
Mhm.
Um, and so once I've established that relationship, gained a little bit of their trust, then we come up with a plan together and find out how to achieve their goals.
And it's an extensive list of
Oh,
forms that I had to fill out, if I remember
And
right.
an
it's a
extensive
little
like
bit.
assessment. I
Yeah.
remember like I was in there for like you were like planned for 3 hours.
It was not 3 hours, and not everybody is 3 hours.
I thought
so.
the heat lamp was weird, like sitting in the chair with just a lamp, and yeah.
But yes, the first visit is typically anywhere between 90 plus minutes. So
What would you say is different from like your examinations and like a regular like PCP or whatever it's called?
PCP,
Yeah.
yeah, primary care physician. So the backing up a little bit, part of the reason why I left the practice that I was at, which I loved the doctors there, I loved the patients there, but it was an insurance-based practice, which is what most doctors' offices are. You get reimbursed from the amount of patients that you see, right? So patients only come to you in office, ideally for preventative visits, but let's be honest, sick visits too.
Mhm.
So you only get paid to see patients in office. So it was like every visit
You
I
gotta
could see.
churn
Yeah,
people,
I got to
right?
see 25, 30 patients a day. And when I got into the lifestyle medicine, that takes time. You can't explain that truly to patients within a 10-minute visit. So I was constantly running behind. I would start my visit apologizing for being an hour behind. And so I had enough. And so I looked for something else. I wasn't happy with my patient care. I was constantly having to work after getting home, which I do now anyways, but I enjoy it a lot more. And so I looked for a different model, and the model that I'm at now is one where it's a membership model. Patients will pay a monthly fee, and so they always have access to me. And through that, it doesn't matter how many patients I see a day.
Mhm.
And so my office visits are, again, anywhere between 5 minutes if they need it, if it's just an acute thing, or it can be up to 2 hours.
Mhm.
So that's how it's evolved. And so coming to this type of model has been extremely worth it for me and my patients.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
awesome.
We love it. I mean, the flexibility of being able to contact you when needed, and hopefully it's not too much. And
Usually it's not enough because you're asking me, and I'm like, just text Kathy. You know?
Yeah.
You're welcome.
It's so much easier now.
But it's been great. And I just feel like we're on top of it. So truthfully, we don't have to see the doctor that much. I mean, so we have our concerns, but again, it's all preventative. So that's nice.
No, I think that's Peter Attia obviously is
Mhm.
very popular, and so
Yes.
people may have read his
Love
book.
him.
But he calls it medicine 3.0, right? And
Mhm.
I feel like that's exactly what you guys provide as far as treatment before the disease actually is there, right?
Mhm.
So for me, I promised my daughter I was going to live to 120, which was, probably a big, big thing. But I think, I came to you and I was like, listen, I don't want to be measured against my age. I want to maximize my health. How can I go way past just going into the doctor's office and saying, oh, you're good, but you're way better than the other 44-year-olds, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's a huge thing to think about is this age of prevention versus dealing with the symptoms afterwards, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and you did a deep dive genetically with us too, because I had Alzheimer's in my family. So we tested the Alzheimer's gene. Any little concern, there's an opportunity. And I think in a healthy way. It wasn't like, oh, well, I'm just going to run every single test on you,
Yeah.
because that's not necessary either. And even when I have concern, you've really talked me down a couple times. But
Thank you again.
but you
Anytime.
have, and you're really good about being on top of the latest like technology or things again that I have shown interest in. You're like, oh, okay, this just came out, sending me a text, or just like, again, you're on top of it. And it's because you live the life too.
Oh, absolutely. I am by far the biggest self-experimenter. I've definitely worn CGMs. I've done the VO2 max testing. I do the crazy workouts. that
She's
you guys
working out right
program.
next
Yeah.
to us.
Yep. Surviving Hell Week as we speak.
And so I know you worked out before the lab, but I remember when you came in, maybe it's because you just had a baby,
I did.
but you were kind of getting back into fitness. And
Mhm.
so how have you felt since then? Because I think you sent me like your DEXA and it was crazy good results. So again, that's something you can show your clients, and like how fitness and your nutrition and everything plays in, not
Yeah.
just medicine.
Yeah. So when I came to enduraLAB, it was Joe joined first. He joined actually 2 years ago, Holiday Hustle.
I can't believe it's been 2 years. I feel like it's been longer, which is
Oh.
great.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's good.
you think it's shorter?
Yeah, I just feel like it's shorter. COVID threw my time scale off, so.
Yeah. But I had just had the baby. I knew I wanted to get back into the gym, and so he fell in love with you guys first.
Oh,
And then I was like, okay, I'll come check it out. And I was, after having the baby, my ligaments were still loose. I love rock climbing. That's like one of my
That's your jam.
passions. Yeah. And so I probably got on the wall a little bit too soon, and I ended up having a shoulder injury. You got pulled out of socket a little bit as I fell.
okay. No big
But
deal.
coming in, modifying things, and you guys were very helpful about how to still work out with my injury. I think that's one thing that you guys do very well. And so getting back into that and then realizing like, oh, no, I can actually do that now,
Mhm.
like, and I'm now my shoulder is stronger than ever. Like I
Yeah,
can
I remember
actually
you were
do
like-
pull-ups now.
Yeah, you were like, oh, I have to nurse this, which is fine. You did.
Yeah.
But at the same time, then we were like, holy cow, she's a beast. Like, look at her go. Like, you went from like 0 to 60 fairly fast. And I think it's because you were smart about it and you let us coach you, which
Yeah.
is huge. Again, like when your patients actually listen to you, how nice is that? Like, we can get you to optimal health a lot quicker if you do these things.
It just all comes down to when you're injured, You can always work out, right?
Totally.
And us as coaches, it's our job to give you a good workout no matter what happens. So
Yeah.
we love when people come in at the very beginning with just like a little something that we can show, hey, there is a whole world that we can do without that shoulder right now, but we're
Mhm.
going to get it better, right?
Mhm.
When people come into the gym, we do movement screen, we sit down, discuss goals. We love to get a Fit 3D scan or a DEXA scan. So when a client comes into you, what are the first tests that you want to run?
Obviously, if they haven't had blood work, that's a big one, right? And so the blood work we do is a little bit more extensive than the traditional
It's
insurance
extensive, right?
based
And I mean,
practice.
I
Yeah.
was doing the trendy,
Yeah, you actually came in with a decent amount of blood work already through
and I hate
Inside
needles.
tracker.
Inside
Mhm.
Tracker, which is a great way if you don't have a doctor who will run all the things that you want. There are plenty of companies now that are direct to consumer that that the patients can do themselves. And so you came in already, but I think a big thing that was missing from you was just the explanation of it maybe
Absolutely.
and why. Like
Yeah. And
it's
what else do I need to be looking at, right?
exactly.
But again, not just a broad thing. Like those companies will give you a write up after, but
Yeah.
it's like based on 44-year-old
Well, I mean,
male.
they're selling more stuff, right?
Right.
Please contact one of our physicians for an explanation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
But you're,
And then here are the supplements that
yeah,
you
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So it is tailored. So I'll do the initial blood work and then also based off their family history. Like I had a patient come to me recently. It's also a member of the gym that big cardiovascular disease risk in his family.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we wanted to do because his father died at essentially the age that he is now from just all of a sudden from a heart attack. So along with the blood work, I was like, hey, we're going to do this now anyways. And it's a heart scan. So again, you mentioned technology is advancing at an amazing speed. And so you can actually get now a non-invasive test that tells you exactly how much plaque you have in your coronary arteries right now. So many people have heard of the calcium test, right? So you can see how much calcification is in your heart arteries at this point in time. But the CT angiogram plus this AI component called Clearly Analysis can really tell you, okay, you actually don't have any calcified plaque, but you have some soft plaque there and it is already at whatever percentage.
Wow.
And it is in this coronary artery, like the Widowmaker, the left anterior descending, or any of the other ones, or it's all over, right?
Which is that becoming more common, the Widowmaker? I feel like I'm hearing that so much more right now.
Yeah.
And-
And maybe it's because it's more detectable, right?
Okay.
These tests are becoming more available. People are getting it done more. And so more people are talking about it before it gets to the point of, oh, like I heard so-and-so died all of a sudden from this unexpectedly. Like it shouldn't be unexpected. Cardiovascular disease, which is heart attacks and strokes, is still the number one killer worldwide by far. I think it's 17 million die annually from heart disease.
Wow.
Um,
And do you think that more would be preventable if we had more access? Because I mean, so for you, people are coming to you with the means and they're coming to you with the curiosity, obviously, because I feel like, I mean, how many times do you get someone who's like, no, I don't want to see that test?
I
You still
Probably
do?
a lot. I would say a lot.
I mean,
People
I
don't
guess
want to know.
I
And
guess I just do.
and
It's crazy.
I'll meet them where they're at, right? And so
Yeah.
if they're not ready, it's okay. And I'll work with you where you want to be.
Right.
There are a lot of people who don't want a lot of those tests done.
Jarod,
but they just want access.
What are you thinking about that? Would you want to know or do you not want to know?
I would like to know, but a lot of people just with our like body scans, DEXA, they do the scan, never look at it. They're like, I don't want to see that. I'll scan again in like 8 months.
Oh, you
When
just
I
tell
look
me if I
better-
look better. Yeah.
And then, they'll wait and then never look at that scan because they're just, I don't know, they don't want to face it, the reality, or they're just scared
Right.
to.
Because
see
they
where they're
know
at.
they have to change something if it's
Yeah.
bad, or sometimes it could be an excuse like, hey, it's okay, I'll keep living the way I'm living. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I want every test there is possible. It's like, get it to me.
Well, you want data points,
I
right?
do love
Because
data points.
without that data, then you're kind of just winging it,
Right.
which is okay too. But, you wouldn't run a successful business just winging it, right?
Right.
You want data points. You want measures that can actually show, oh, there has been an improvement. My VO2 max has improved,
Right.
or it's gotten worse. What am I doing wrong?
And things are bound to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to die from something. And we all have genetics and genes that we're trying to understand or maybe not understand. And it's like we have to take the data and make a plan forward that lets us live the longest, more fruitful life that we can.
Yeah. We're all about longevity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, when I came in, some of the other cool tests that we did was like the Gallery test, which is a blood biopsy, right?
Yep.
So just kind of explain to people who may have not have heard it what that is and why we use it.
Yeah, so the company is Grail, and the test that they have is called Gallery, and it's essentially the first company to come to market with a multi-cancer screening blood test. So it screens for 50 different cancers, and essentially what it is detecting is free cell DNA. So is there a tumor at the time of your blood draw that is growing rapidly? And because it is growing rapidly, parts of it are going to be outgrowing its blood supply and then shedding off into the bloodstream. That is what it is detecting. Okay. So it can't pick up every single cancer, but for the ones that are growing rapidly, like those are the ones that you want to detect. And so the fact that there's, it's non-invasive, there's no radiation, and it's a blood test. So if you're already running blood work for something else, it's the same needle. You don't even have an extra thing to do.
I don't even remember, just one extra vial probably.
Yeah. So it is an additional cancer screen because the best way to survive cancer is to detect it early.
What cancers does it not catch? Obviously brain cancer.
Brain cancer because of the blood-brain barrier, slow-growing cancers. So a lot of prostate cancers, someone could have prostate cancer, but because it is so slow-growing, it's not outgrowing anything and therefore shedding. It's not giving off that free cell DNA signal. So it can miss that, right? But it will detect aggressively growing prostate cancer.
Okay.
So that's the little nuance that if a doctor is ordering it, they should be explaining that to the patient.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that for me, how cool is something like that? Because even when you're getting like a whole body MRI or something, it only detects it if it's a certain size, right? So it could have just started fast growing. The blood screen could catch it. It's just awesome. And people would ask me, why did you do that? Like, why would you want to know? I'm like, why would you not? If I get cancer, I want to survive it, right? So it's just one of those things I think we just assume that people want to know because we do.
Yeah.
But we are probably the minority of people who really are like aggressively looking after their health.
I mean, and I guess you could say the same for fitness too. Like we are in the gym all the time. So we're like, oh, everyone must be working out. And really the majority of people aren't focused on their fitness. And it's a scary thing, just like going to the doctor and getting blood work and all of those things. So I
mean,
get
you
it.
see it anytime you're out in public. Usually if you're really health focused, you might be going to an organic or a big like grocery store like Whole Foods. You're heading to the gym. You're surrounded by people who are most like you, right? You've got your community. It's not until you step outside of that that you really see the overall health of the population right now, which is
like Disney World.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
State Fair. Go to the state fair.
Oh no, I don't like
Yeah.
the state fair at all.
I've
I
never been.
wish.
So dirty.
You've never been? Oh,
Never
neither
been
have
to
I.
the state fair.
I don't think I've been to the
Okay.
Texas State Fair.
You like
but
the state fair?
Well, I mean, I think it's something that every person living in DFW should experience
Okay.
at least once. I haven't been back in a while, but I have been.
I think that's the thing too, that even though we're talking a lot about health and fitness, and obviously today we even have our own doctor sitting across the table, we still all have fun together, right?
Yes.
And if I go out and I partake in a full day of state fair food, I don't have to listen from my doctor. Like she's not going to point a finger at me. She'll probably ask me which one was my favorite. Right?
Yeah.
Corn dog.
Or when
Yeah.
you go to the Missy Elliott concert with your
Oh,
doctor.
yes.
That's also
That was
super
fun.
fun.
So one of the biggest things that obviously we did, I think we were doing it maybe even before we met you, that I enjoy and I like my clients to do is continuous glucose monitoring. Because if you look at kind of more of the data that I've seen, controlling your blood sugar is way more important than what people think, especially with cardiovascular disease.
It is. It is. So not only is glucose itself damaging to your arteries, but even insulin, which is the hormone that helps to regulate or kind of transport glucose, that if you have an excessive amount, it can be damaging to your vasculature too. So continuous glucose monitoring kind of tells you personally how your body responds to certain foods, certain lifestyle things like sleep or lack thereof. You can have the same exact diet, do the exact same thing, but if you slept 8 hours versus 4 hours, your glucose response will be completely different.
And
Yeah.
I love it because it's such a mirror glass into the body. Like,
Oh, you cannot cheat
you
it.
can't cheat it. Like, there's no way. It's not like logging your food on MyFitnessPal or anything, and like maybe you miss the bag of M&Ms. It's like, no, I know you had something right here.
What's this spike?
Yeah,
will-
what's this?
I will actually often text my patients, hey, what did you eat for lunch? Just out of curiosity, because I'll see an alert come up.
An
on my
alert.
phone.
Yeah, when I was on mine, I'm sure Dr. Kathy's like, make sure you share that with me. I'm like, oh, I forgot. Sorry. No, I enjoyed that process too. And I did the experimenting with doing certain carbs in a certain amount. So like oatmeal and apples and things. And I would eat so many grams of them to see what it did to my blood sugar. And then I found out through that, like lentils was one that didn't spike my blood sugar. And it's very unique to the person. Some things are generally going to be the same, but I think everyone should experiment it. They would look at my arm and be like, oh, do you have, why are you doing that?
Are you
It's like,
diabetic?
are you diabetic? And I'm like, no, I'm just seeing what's going on. And they're like, okay, weirdo.
Yeah, no, my response to rice is much different than Joe's response. My husband, like mine will shoot. Embarrassing. Almost in the 200s. Like
wow.
rice. I'm Asian. I should be able to eat rice.
That is just not fair.
It's
That's
not.
not
It's
fair.
not. But if I eat it earlier on in the day, it doesn't spike as high. And if I do eat it later on in the day and I know it's going to go up, I'll do the whole like eat veggies first.
Right.
And then, so I'll
Little
time it.
protein,
And then
apple
I'll go
cider
out
vinegar.
and move
Right.
afterwards.
Right.
Right. And so when I know that's going to happen, I can take the steps to bring my blood sugar down faster for overall health.
You learn these hacks, like you
Mhm.
said, the moving after dinner, like that doesn't matter if you're wearing a glucose monitor or not. Like you should move after you eat.
And I love the idea of the exercise snacks that's like becoming popular now.
Yeah.
Yes,
Because
meaning
obviously, well,
You
usually
do
the
little
thing is, hey,
bursts
let's
of
go
exercise.
for a walk,
right.
right? But if you think about how glycogen is used in the body, right, it's musculature.
Mm-hmm.
So hopping down and doing a few push-ups or doing a few air squats, that can actually be a little bit more effective than just a long walk.
Absolutely. Like whenever I'll see some of my patients' blood sugars, I'll be like, hey, what did you just eat? But then also, can you do a couple of like table push-ups or air squats for me?
Yeah.
Instead of say, oh, like go take more insulin to try to bring your blood sugar
Right.
down. Do these other things that will also bring your blood sugar down without the negative effects of taking a medication that can bottom you out or something like that.
So do
So-
you see, I guess people often look at people and say, oh, they must be in good shape because of their weight. But if you look at something like that, I could easily see how people become diabetic with low muscle mass, right?
Yes. Yes. So I'm sure you all have heard of the weight loss shot, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound. So it is not uncommon to see someone lose 30 pounds, but yet their metabolic numbers actually get worse. And when that happens, that tells me, yes, they've lost a lot of weight, but a lot of it is muscle, which
I think that's so important to share because
Yeah.
I don't think people realize that's what's happening inside. Again, that's not
And there's
looking
a-
in the body.
But the whole thing is there's a protocol that should be followed.
there is a protocol. And so
right?
I'm not actually against that medication at all. I actually think it is a very effective tool for a lot of patients. But you have to keep in mind that, one of the things you don't want to sacrifice is muscle mass. So anyone on the shot has to be working out their muscles. You have to put that physical stress on their muscles to make it grow. And you can't just work out and then not supply
Fuel.
your body with the
Right.
building blocks or fuel to build the muscle, because you'll still see that same effect. So you have to eat enough protein to build your muscles after you break them down with the workout, right?
No, but are the side effects to that, are they like low energy, or is it because you're not feeling like, do the side effects make you obviously not want to eat as much and maybe not exercise? So you really have to pass that.
Yeah. So I tell people, if you're going to do this, you have to use it as your tool. So you're not going to be hungry. Like, instead of going for the fast food, like, do protein, like focus on protein, and you'll get the results.
Right.
I think, we share clients that are obviously on this, and I treat them kind of like my high schoolers, right? So people always talk about, they come into the gym, they're afraid to do a push-up because they're obviously going to become a bodybuilder. That's what Arnold
Magically.
did, right? So when people are coming in on the shot and I'm trying to get more protein in, a lot of times I have to do it via a smoothie because we can drink more than we can usually eat. It's not as satiating. So that's one of the things I usually tell them is like, hey, let's make a smoothie that you can stomach and try to jam it with as much protein, especially at the beginning of the day if they're going to work out early with me. But yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's not appetizing. And I'm sure it's not appetizing to them in the moment.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things like a pill. Like, you just have to take it and you have to do it.
But it's so hot right now, the shot.
Right.
And I think people are making a lot of money off this shot, obviously, right? So people are just taking this shot and losing the weight, and they're loving it. What they don't realize is how fast they could be losing muscle mass.
And then therefore bone density too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, immunity.
Yes.
Right? You think about all of this stuff that plays together with the role of muscle mass, and people are so afraid of gaining muscle. It's exactly what we need to put on. And when we talk about strength training, we're not talking about like chair yoga, right? We're like, you have got to load to a point of, like, let's say 10 or 12 reps, you're going at exhaustion. Whether or not that's a modified push-up for some people, or it's a dumbbell bench press or a barbell bench press, like, you have to take yourself to a point of exhaustion after like 10 to 12 reps and then repeat it. And that's where a coach can come in and really help. And of course, having the right physician. But I just want to emphasize that for anybody who's out there on the shot, like, you need to be doing more stuff than just injecting yourself once a week.
Well, and that's why I love you, Kathe, because you do push the outside stuff, because you're recommending a lot of your patients to come do strength training, and it's to combat osteoporosis and all the things that like exercise is good for. So on that side, how do you convince your patients to do something like that, like add fitness to their routine?
It's hard. It is hard. Like we talked about, change is hard, but having you guys as a source of someone that I know and trust, because I know you guys are not going to hurt my patients.
Yeah.
Because if you do, they will tell me.
That's certainly not the goal.
Yeah. So number one is, when you exercise, you really have to be cognizant of not injuring yourself, because that can cause setbacks, right?
Right.
So having someone guide you through the proper lifting technique is essential. And then if they're not ready for that, you just start with what they are ready for. So if they're doing nothing, just telling them, okay, start walking. Like, that is something that they can do. And then once they're like, okay, I'm good with walking, like, okay, how about we add in a little bit of this? Yeah. Or if what they're doing is working for them, great. But if their labs come back and it shows that it's not working for them, then we can say, okay, tweak this. We actually have to focus on getting more muscle on you, and this is how we're going to do this. Or we have to work on maybe some zone 2 training or interval training. And so it's just finding out where the patient is with how they feel, what their labs look like, and then just tweaking things.
Yeah, for all you out there, don't underestimate walking. It is sexy, right? And if walking is too easy, put on a rucksack, right? Add a little weight, add a little resistance. But I do think that people fear walking into a gym because they're going to get hurt. And really, when you go into a gym, you're building the resilience not to get hurt.
Absolutely.
And we always tell our athletes, every day that you come in here for the first 3 months, you should walk out like, I could do more, especially with personal training and group classes. Usually we're talking about, how many more reps did you have? We don't want you to go to failure, right? We want you to come up to that point where you have like 2 or 3 left and then let's back it off. And then we're going to rinse and repeat it. And then you get stronger. The most important thing you can do with anything is consistency. So if I hurt you on day one in a session, they're probably not going to come back. And our job as coaches or as the gym is to make people healthier. And we can't do that if we're hurting people when they walk in the door. So a lot of athletes are going to ask about supplementation, right? Right. Which is a really fun topic for me, because when people ask me a lot about supplementation, I'm like, you can't even drink water. Why am I going to talk to you about supplements? Because, you can't even do the basics for me.
That's the thing is the basics.
So let's talk basics. Like when you look at a client, what are the basics that you're going to start with? And then let's start going into, okay, when you master that, here are the supplements that are cool or promising. Obviously, we know when we get to a certain point, it is definitely personalized. Like there are things that I am taking that ISIS does not take, right? So let's just start with the basics.
Okay. So basics, based off their blood work. Are they deficient in key nutrients, right? Vitamin D, B12, folate, CoQ10. CoQ10 is one that a lot of doctors don't check, but should, because that is essential in ATP production.
Right, which I didn't even know. And then I think when I was deficient in it and I started doing research, I'm like, why was I not supplementing this beforehand? But
Especially
go ahead.
athletes.
Yeah. And part of the reason a lot of people think like the more things you take, like the less healthy you are. It's not that. It's because you're not currently getting it in your foods, right? So our ancestors, cavemen, whatever, hunter-gatherers, used to eat the whole animal from head to tail, right? I know. You just made a face. So where CoQ10 is found in highest sources is essentially organ meats. And I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of supplement companies saying, oh, now this product has liver and heart and kidney and spleen in it, right?
Yeah.
So those things don't sound very appetizing, but you could technically get away with not taking a supplement if you're deficient in it, if you really focus on, okay, I am going to eat pate 3 times a week.
So many organs.
You eat pate though.
I do. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
But what's interesting about CoQ10 too is when we were running a lot, you told us that we needed to take more of it, right?
Because the more that you work out, the more you will utilize it.
Right. Okay.
And so it depends on your activity level. It depends on your nutrition or diet. And then it depends on your metabolism of things too.
As
So
CoQ10, is that water soluble? Are you going to
fat
pass
soluble.
it? Okay.
Yeah. So taking it with food is key too. So vitamin D, B12, we talked about those. Iron is another one that if you're deficient in, you can feel it. You can feel fatigued. And while the standard CBC, which tells if you're anemic or not, even if it doesn't show that you're anemic, but ferritin, which is where the body stores iron, if that is low, and even if it's normal, like within the normal range, if it's on the lower end, you can feel fatigued. And so you, again, either get it through red meats or dark leafy greens, or you supplement with it so that you can be more productive and feel better to be able to do whatever activity you want to, or even just to get through life in general, right? So those are the key ones that I think everyone needs to not be on, but make sure that they're checking. And if they're deficient in it, then supplement with it somehow.
Fish oil. Another one.
Yes, omega-3 fish oil. There's a lot of evidence coming out now that shows that it is actually very beneficial for heart health, brain health, overall inflammation, just kind of calming down the inflammation that happens after you work out. So a lot of athletes will or should supplement with, honestly, anyone with a brain.
Yeah.
Right.
To supplement with
Because
it.
I know that I had, D1 athletes, and they're coming back and saying, hey, we're taking this high dosage. They would take high dosage omega-3s as a concussion.
Yeah. So in my fellowship, we actually had a study going on with a lot of our football players, like the TCU football players. And they would, we would put them on a baseline dose of fish oil. And then if they actually got a concussion, they were actually taking close to 10,000 milligrams.
I mean, it was crazy high when I heard.
It was crazy high, yeah. And it would actually help with the recovery process. So I think that is now standard, is to really boost omega-3 levels in those that are trying to recover from a concussion or brain injury.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Okay, so those are the basics. And then once we dial up supplements, right? People want to hear about things like peptides and hormones. Ours are all basic that we talk about, right? We talk about creatine and protein
Yes.
and water,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Which are super important, and we can talk about that at a different time. But let's talk about the next level of supplementation.
Yeah. So same thing with you guys. Like I don't even touch those things until the basic, are they working out? Are they sleeping? Do they have the basic nutrients at a level that is optimal? Then once that is all taken care of, if you wanted to delve into the world of peptides like growth hormone analogs or the semaglutide, right? That is a peptide, or terzepatide. And then even things like NAD.
Now, do you think I've heard a lot of studies coming out like NAD was really hot and now it's kind of tapering off NM, NAD.
Yeah, yeah. And I really think it depends on the person and the health conditions going on. So
Okay.
it can definitely, like I've seen it be really beneficial for some of those that are trying to recover from either a brain injury or even long COVID, or different, like Epstein-Barr can cause, like it's a virus, right? So this whole long COVID picture has actually been around for a very long time. Like different viruses and different bacteria can affect a person's body and affect their recovery and their overall health. So it can be a trigger for autoimmune issues like type 1 diabetes, or just in general, like chronic fatigue syndrome, right? And so for those that already have trouble with their health, like autoimmune issues, sometimes those are the people that will really benefit from these additional things. Well, I've again, self-experimentation. I have dabbled in NAD myself. And like maybe I felt good for a little bit, but it wasn't worth the cost to me because it's not cheap.
Right.
These
No.
peptides are not
Expensive.
cheap. The NAD infusions.
And then it's just like NAD is sold in so many formats, right? So, I mean, is a powder or a pill even worth it? Or is it something that should be injected? Or,
I haven't seen any evidence that strongly suggests anything other than IV NAD
yeah,
is beneficial.
because when I look at a lot of, it's the same thing that we talk about when we're at the grocery store and they're asking you which rice is better, white versus brown rice. And they've got chips and Diet Dr. Pepper and Ho-Hos in their grocery cart. I'm like, why do you even care? Like, you need to focus on this. So a lot of people are taking these crazy longevity supplements with hardly any data on efficacy to try to out supplement their poor diet, right? And that just doesn't work. People out there need to understand that you have to focus on the basics first. I mean,
You do.
even with me, you're like, no, yeah, we'll talk about that later. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I get that because I would use the same thing. Oh, yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
Do
but-
this first.
But also, if they really want to try it, and if it's not going to hurt them or if it's not dangerous, I say, okay, try it. Like by all means, spend your money and try it and see if you feel anything physically better, or we can check your labs and see if we see any improvements in things. So I don't tell them not to do something just because I haven't experienced that there wasn't a benefit. So
It's amazing how getting the right food, right sleep, hydrating, exercising, how good that can make you feel. But people just don't want to do that. They'd
No.
rather.
I mean, if you look at my testosterone from the time I started with you to the time now, it continuously goes up. And probably the biggest difference is sleep. And I just did a huge endurance year, which normally you would kind of see testosterone drop, but mine went up, which is really cool. And all that was
now
is
you're just
sleep.
bragging.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but I'm just
I
like,
was going to say my blood work's pretty much perfect.
no, like
so...
I'm not saying, I'm just saying like the
kidding.
easiest intervention was sleep.
Right.
And a lot of guys, they're going to look at testosterone and want to supplement that, right? Hey, I want to get on the T shot. My T's low. Well, how's your sleep?
It can go up by 50% if you just get enough sleep and even enough restorative sleep. So even if the hours doesn't change, like the total amount, if you just change something like, not eating right before bed, you can get more deep restorative sleep.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's same for like women and women's health too. There's a lot of things that we could do to prevent night sweats and all the things that come as we age. You know, maybe not drink that glass of wine before bed and other things that are like simple fixes.
Are there any things that are coming out that are new, or is any kind of data that you've seen that's on the forefront that you think is maybe potentially positive?
Worth experimenting.
As far as like diagnostics test or like
Yeah, I mean, it can be diagnostics tests, technology. Obviously, CGMs now are available over the counter,
so
which are
direct
cool.
to consumer CGM. I think you
Huge.
actually knew about it before I did and you sent it to me. So yes, and you no longer have to go through your doctor to get a CGM. And I played around with the direct to consumer ones. I actually really like those for patients who are not diabetics because it doesn't have that alarm.
Oh, the
right?
alarm. That's the worst.
So you can get these alarms that go off when you get low blood sugar readings, which obviously is important for diabetics. But for non-diabetics, a lot of times it's because you're just laying on it and it's compressing the subcutaneous tissue, and therefore you're getting false low readings. And therefore at 3 a.m. you're getting this alarm that's waking you up, which is
Doesn't help your
Yeah,
sleep.
exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't help your sleep at all. So these direct-to-consumer ones don't even measure anything below 70, which is good because a lot of people who are healthier their bodies don't go that low on a regular basis. So it's nice to have that turned off, right? The alarm portion of it. But yeah, you no longer have to go through a doctor. You don't need a doctor's visit to then prescribe it to you to send to a pharmacy who may or may not have it in stock.
Right.
So, and it's affordable too. That's the other thing. I think a month's worth through Stello, which is the Dexcom one. It's $89
Right. Because when we first started experimenting, how long
200
ago
a
was that?
month. Yeah.
It was like
200
Yeah.
to
a month.
300 a month.
And
Yeah,
then I was
levels.
like, even having you as a doctor, I couldn't get the prescription, and then insurance was a mess. It was like, it was so hard to do something that like I wanted to do. I was like, how is this possible? There's such a barrier.
Mhm.
So this is awesome that you can just get it over the counter.
Yeah.
now.
So another one that is a lot of is sexier, I guess, is essentially these genomic tests, right? So these cheek swabs, similar to like 23andMe, but now it's actually like a lot of different SNPs that you can check that tells you exactly, oh, based on my genetics, what would the optimal diet be for
Is this
me?
the I'm connected one or something Joe was telling me about? Is this the one you
No.
did?
No, I haven't
No.
done this.
Oh, you haven't done it yet.
I haven't
Oh,
done this one specifically. So this one company is called Intellex DNA.
Okay.
And actually, Dr. Dale Bredesen, who is the one that wrote The End of Alzheimer's, does it on all of his patients. And he's currently running a study right now with showing how his protocol, which involves not just supplements and medications, but also lifestyle interventions, detoxing, things like that, how it can actually reverse cognitive decline. So even if you have a higher risk genetically for Alzheimer's, it doesn't destine you to get it. It just
Right.
means that you have to be that much more aggressive at controlling all the things that you can control.
Prolong it,
And
basically.
we're talking about almost all these diseases are inflammatory, right? So if you're creating,
Inflammation is a signal, essentially.
yeah. So when you look at a kind of a DNA swab, how does that relate to an allergy test? Food allergies testing to me is hit and miss, maybe.
And it is hit and miss because sometimes you'll do it and everything that you're eating is showing up. But part of the reason why that's showing up is because you have a gut issue. And so a lot of times if you focus on healing the gut through, cutting out foods that are more processed, that have different things in it that shouldn't be in it.
I love how you're skating over that very carefully.
Yes.
People get emotional about food.
Yeah.
Food is emotional.
Yeah.
It really is. So if you can avoid the things that can impair your gut, and even anti-inflammatories, there is a time and place for anti-inflammatories, but it can damage your gut barrier. So if someone's popping ibuprofen, Advil every day, they can cause that breakdown in their gut barrier. And so food allergy testing can be beneficial just to kind of tell you, do you have a gut issue? Because if everything under the sun is showing up, then obviously focus on healing the gut first. And then maybe, if you're still having some issues, then you can check it to see, okay, what is it that is showing up that maybe you should avoid on a regular basis. And so that is something that is personalized, that not everyone has the same result. Because for a lot of people with autoimmune issues, the big ones to avoid are gluten, dairy, and egg, right? But sometimes some weird things show up like apple.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some people where that is what showed up. And I'm like, that's strange. But then when they eat apple, they're like, yeah, I feel really bad. It's like, okay. And don't eat it on a regular basis.
Right.
So the DNA test.
The DNA test, yeah. So it'll tell you, like, would you do better with like a animal-based diet? Would you do better with a low saturated fat diet, or are you okay with a high saturated fat diet? Are you susceptible to caffeine actually causing symptoms? And
I would hate to hear that.
Why?
I want my coffee.
Why don't you want to know the data?
Oh,
no,
That's
not that
this.
I don't want to. I would hate to hear that I can't have coffee. That's the difference.
Yeah, it's like Jarod not being able to have beef. What would you do, man?
Yeah.
I don't know. Become vegan. Like,
and here's the thing: the test can show you what is a possibility, right? Like, so you may be one where caffeine is supposed to make you more sensitive and cause issues, but if it doesn't, then don't pay attention to that test, right?
Right.
So you have to listen to your body. You really have to kind of take in the whole picture, and these tests can help guide you as far as the different lifestyle things that you should do. But if you're feeling fine, then don't.
But what if I'm not?
But what's funny is what's my fine?
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
So,
what if I'm
like,
used to it? And so I'm like, I need 4 cups of coffee a day. But then if I didn't and I chose something else and I felt better,
Yeah.
then maybe it might be.
Self-experimentation, right?
you have to. It's like the
Yeah.
first time we did a Whole30.
I'm like, we're
The
going to order
correct
these
way,
tests
where
today.
you like actually take everything out and then you slowly build it back. Like everyone who does Whole30 only does the first half, maybe the first third.
Mhm.
There's no reintroduction. Like that's the magic. But you have to take out a dairy or a gluten and then slowly put it back in different forms
Mhm.
to see what really affects you and what doesn't, so you can actually feel it. So when I was like, I'm good on 4 hours of sleep, until I got 8 hours of sleep. And then I'm like, I get 4 hours of sleep now, I am dead. I'm like, that was my normal, you know?
Yeah.
So I think you also have to kind of step back and say, maybe what you're doing right now is not how you should be feeling. And there could be a better feeling.
Yeah.
But that starts with obviously talking to your physician and getting some testing.
Yes, and then also realizing that what may have worked for you in the past
Mm-hmm.
might not be what is best for you now,
Yeah.
based on your current situation or health issues or things like that. So a lot of people who metabolically, I got them healthier with utilizing fasting, and then now they're doing better as far as like body composition and things like that. Then we actually transition. Okay, you don't have to fast as much, and now we actually focus on protein, like building up that muscle. Right now, you've lost a lot of the body fat. Let's work on that muscle. So fasting would actually be detrimental, right? Because you can't get that quality of.
Because people still want to live and eat like they're in their 20s, or maybe they wish to get back to that. Now our bodies are totally different.
Totally different.
We have to change that up. Absolutely.
so on that topic, I'm 22, low 20s. If I were to do a test now, like DNA, diet, how beneficial would it be? Because as I get older, my metabolism is going to change so much.
Yeah.
So
Your genetics don't change. So those tests you can do at any point in time. Like the youngest patient I've done it on has been 16.
Which is
Okay,
how cool is that?
It
to
is
know
cool.
at that point.
So obviously his parents know the results of everything. And it's one of those, it's like, okay, this is your encyclopedia. Based on the issues that arise, we will refer back to it, and it will give us suggestions of what to do. Like on one of my patients, it tells us that this kid is going to be more prone to addictive behaviors, impulsiveness. And so as he goes to college and gets into these situations, like there are certain things that we can recommend to him to help negate those feelings that he's going to be experiencing.
That's
I
a
love
cool
that.
thing.
That's really cool.
test, there's really no too young to test. Like,
Not for those genomic tests. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
your metabolism is going to change even as you build that muscle mass that you're
It'll get
seeking right
better.
now,
That's
right?
true. So how would I know the frequency of when I should test? Like I get a test, I eat how it tells me to eat, and then when would I want to shift and see if my body changed? Now I need to eat different stuff.
Well, you wouldn't do the genetic test again, like that's one and done. You would do all the other tests to see, are your inflammation markers improving? Are your metabolic numbers, your glucose and insulin improving? So usually my patients are anywhere between testing every 3 months to testing once a year.
Okay.
Once a year is for my patients who have everything dialed in and are doing great, I'll see them once a year.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so we do have a few questions from listeners. All right, so here's probably my favorite one. With all the conflicting information and multitude of influencers telling us what we should be doing, what's the best place to start when wanting to improve longevity?
I would say even more important than any supplements or medications or anything out there, honestly, is get your exercise regimen in order, right?
It's crazy. I'll ask that question to a lot of clients because it's just a fun one for me to talk about because obviously we own a gym.
I was going to say,
It's a plug for
Shout
enduraLAB.
But I'll say, hey, I'm going to give you 3 things and you tell me which one is going to affect you long term the most. Exercise, rest, nutrition. Everybody picks nutrition. And I'm like, you're wrong.
wrong.
It's crazy to think about how big exercise is. But I mean, one of the biggest predictors of longevity when people start looking at that is like muscle mass and strength.
Mhm.
So muscle quality. And then improving your VO2 significantly is huge for cardiovascular. Now, obviously, there's things going on the back end that even our healthy friends that had a freak heart attack, you could have helped
Mhm.
decipher that looking at those tests. But I mean, exercise is so important.
So important. It is the best thing that you could do for your body, not only for the cardiovascular benefits, but just overall, like being able to be independent, right? Being able to walk without a walker or being scared that you're going to fall, being able to travel and lift your suitcase above your head as you get older. It is so easy to lose that muscle, and it is so much harder to gain it back once you've lost it. It can be done, but it takes a lot of work. And so if you can instill those habits now, you will be so like one of the things that I love doing is watching people in their like 70s, 80s, 90s like lift heavy
Yeah.
things,
I mean,
right?
it's awesome.
It's so inspiring.
So inspiring. It's like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are the people that are living a full life in their 80s and 90s. So, we see it all the time. Like people who are that age, their life is consumed by doctor visits and healthcare issues. And it's not how I want to spend my last 10, 20 years in life.
And I think that notion is changing of what each age group looks like. I remember like when I was younger, I mean, it was literally 40 over the hill, like dead, right? And that was the parties that you had. And it's like now it's like I'm about to be 40 and I feel like I'm thriving, like better than I was. I wasn't exactly an athlete when I was younger, but now I feel like much more of an athlete. But I hope that in my 50s and 60s, I'm still going forward in that progression. And it is really inspiring training people. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, I'm not going easier on you because you're in your 60s. Like, you're that strong, you're capable, and like, we've got a lot more life to live. Like, let's keep going. And usually that pumps them up.
Yeah.
But
one of your clients who's in their 60s was doing like weighted pull-ups. I was like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Hashtag goals.
And I
Yes.
got so many comments on that video when we posted it. It goes to show it doesn't matter when you start, you can still make a lot of progress.
You can.
You go from, we've had clients in their 60s who couldn't balance on one leg to, like Libby, she's deadlifting 205 pounds for 5 reps, like 3 years later. So doesn't matter when you start, you can still get very strong. But something I saw the other day that I loved was we have this idea that aging happens linearly, just every year just gets a little bit worse. But the concept that this guy was talking about was actually steps.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain age ranges in which you see a shift, a sharp decline. If
Mhm.
you're not doing strength training, you're going to see a sharp decline, and then you're going to live with that decline for a series of
like
years,
this
and then
sh-
boom.
yeah.
If you look at that, hopefully that shifts people to understand how important it is to get on it early, right?
Oh,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Smooth those steps out or even take them completely out.
Yeah, I had seen a video, I think on Instagram, that was like, you prevent this in your 20s and you prevent this in your 30s and like all this stuff. Or like this didn't start at 50, it started in your 30s or something like that. But it just goes to show that you can prevent a lot starting earlier. So like Jarod, the fact that you have been at the gym since graduating high school, a lot of your habits, your age, are advanced for health and longevity because you surround yourself in this atmosphere. And I think our kids will know how much protein is in their breakfast, going into college, where the majority don't know. And they don't know that they need exercise daily. And then they come to us, usually post college or, maybe early 30s, and they're like, okay, it's time for me to get serious. And in that sense, I wish there was a lot more education
Other than TikTok.
other than TikTok. But hey, if TikTok gets them in,
If they're watching the right people.
that's right.
Right.
That's
It just
the
goes
tough
back to
thing.
going back to the basics. Like,
Right.
quit looking at all these quick hacks, because health is not done fast. It is slow. It's a slow process. We have a
And it's
slogan focus.
ongoing.
Yeah, it's ongoing.
There won't be an end date.
No,
like
there shouldn't be an end date.
no. Yeah.
When people want to make changes and they want to get better health, I'm like, it's not fast. It cannot be fast. Number one, we talked about it with Lee Long, you lose that part of the journey, right? And really getting better understanding. And also, like most of the quick fixes, there's a bounce back, there's a rebound. Like, I lose 30 pounds on Ozempic without doing strength training or focusing on how to eat during that time. When I'm off of it, I am right back where I was. I'm just lighter, and now I'm going to go right back. And the scary thing with that is maybe I've lost muscle mass, and now when I go back, I'm putting on more fat.
Right.
So, the idea of these quick fixes, there's just not a magic pill.
And I get that that's daunting. Like I know, Jarod, in your journey to kind of gain all this muscle mass, like you have to eat a certain amount.
A lot.
Like
Yeah.
So knowing that you basically have to eat that much going forward to keep on your muscle. I mean, how do you kind of stay motivated and locked in? And because a lot of people that are listening may be like, well, I want to be fit and I want to be strong, but like, gosh, I have to
It's
do
too hard.
that every day.
You know?
What helps me is if I don't eat enough to bulk on a certain day, it's fine. As long as I eat enough to maintain, and at least I keep the habit for that day, and then tomorrow, okay, I'll try to eat more. But at least I worked out, still ate my protein, and I'm not kind of backtracking in a way.
Which goes to the whole point of, even though it's slow, which may be daunting for people, the other thing on that is there's not an end. I'm not time capped that I have to do this in 6 months.
Right.
When I look at it as ongoing, like, you're on this journey to gain muscle mass. If you miss one day, it's not a big deal because you've got a lot of years ahead of you. So I think that's important. And these changes that we're talking about are simple. Like when you go in, like to Dr. Kathe, or you go into enduraLAB, we're not giving you this big challenge. It's really simple little steps, like we've talked about before, almost too easy not to do.
Yeah, like Jarod, you've learned little things like how to cook chicken, how to like all of these things. You didn't even know where chicken was at the grocery store.
Yeah, she had to map it out for me.
They're totally out of chicken at Target.
Yeah.
How to,
But
You're
I
like,
mean,
no,
along the
impossible.
way, I feel like you've learned and you're learning like these healthy
I'm
habits.
pretty into it. I want to like perfect every dish, which I know it's not easy, but I want to get to that point where I can just have like 10 different dishes I can make for the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't get boring.
You need to
Switch
talk
it
to
up.
Joe. He is a heck of a chef.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember the pool party and some great food.
So on both sides, at your office and at the gym, we always are talking about motivation with our clients. because when things are going good, it's great and it's easy for us and we really enjoy the journey. But when things are going bad, how do you work with your patients with motivation or consistency at that point?
Well, number one, if you're going to do something on a regular basis, you have to enjoy it, right? And so one of the things that made me fall in love with enduraLAB was the people and the community, and that is what I wake up at 5 a.m. for
Oh,
every
yes.
day.
It's a fun crowd.
It is,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is. And so, enjoy what you're doing, finding a way to make it fun. And so if you don't like working in a group, like if you like competing against yourself, like doing something like Garmin or like tracking it, that would be one way to stay motivated is surround yourself. And it's true. If someone doesn't show up when they say they're going to show up, we all check in like, hey, are you okay? So that would be one way to stay motivated in the exercise realm. As far as labs go, if it looks like they're metabolically not getting better and they're doing everything right, we investigate why. You just check in and see what else can we tweak or do. Is there something else going on? And so part of that is just working with someone who can deliver the news in an appropriate way, and that's finding the right doctor for you. So what I would tell people is obviously a doctor who is going to listen and communicate and have that time with you. You'll be able to find them in this type of model easier. So the membership model, so DPC, practice, or direct primary care. But even in the traditional model too, you can find them. It's just harder. So having a doctor that will actually listen to you and not just dismiss you or poo-poo you, is one way to.
She
to stay
uses
motivated.
poo-poo as well.
Poo-poo.
And,
So if someone wanted to work with you or someone like you, how would we? I mean, we already do, but how would
Yes,
somebody else?
So with our practice, we actually it's a 4-physician practice. So we are open to patients. So just call the office and say, I'm interested in having a doctor established with myself, right? So 1-to-1 MD is our practice.
Perfect.
Um,
And you have a wait list, right?
I do,
Yeah.
I do.
She's that awesome.
But all the other doctors in my practice are great too.
Yeah.
They really are. And so just call our office. And, if you're not in our location or, if this is not the right practice for you, there are plenty of other practices too that are available. You just got to find one. So just search direct primary care and a bunch will show up.
I think one of the things too is ask questions.
Yes.
Obviously, when we started, there's definitely things that you were like, hey, I would like to do this. And I would say, well, why? And the education component is important to me. And you guys obviously have that at your practice. And you definitely, we can have a conversation, right? It's not a doctor writing a prescription and I got to take it. So have a conversation with your doctor and ask questions. And if they're not ones that are going to answer it or they're just blowing you off, well, maybe it's time to find a different physician, right?
Yes, even with specialists. So yesterday I had a patient who came to me and was like, I was excited to show my cardiologist my labs. And he essentially said, oh, I don't have time to look at those. And part of it is, number one, he probably doesn't have time. Again, he's in that hamster wheel of going from one patient room to the next patient room to the end. And so it's like, oh, it's something that he's not familiar with, even though he probably is. It's just in a different format, right? And so, yes. So if a physician that you're with, whether it's a primary care physician or a specialist, says, I don't have time for that, just search for another one. There's
But
plenty of
whatever you
fish in the
do,
sea.
yeah, take control of your health.
I
Yes.
think
You know?
that's the big takeaway for me is that like doctors, well, I just used to think that all doctors were the same or like all dentists were the same or everyone.
Yeah, you just go to
you
whatever
just
your insurance
go to one
provides. Right.
but I mean, it would be unfair to say like go to any gym. I mean, we're not the same as an LA Fitness. So it's like you do need to know the practice, know the doctors, see their credentials. Like, again, are they making time to get to know you? And it really makes a difference on your overall care.
Right. Jared, what's your takeaway today?
Just consistency. Be consistent in fitness, diet. If you don't have it one day, get it the next day. Don't be too hard on yourself and just try your best.
Kathe, you got somebody to leave our listeners with one piece of advice?
Enjoy life, right? So do all the things necessary so that you can enjoy life as you get older. Like that's one thing that is for sure. We are all going to get older, but how you live your years, what you do now affects that. So make the changes that you need to personally and in your medical or not like in your health, right? To make that a possibility.
You can still be climbing rock walls in your
Yes.
70s,
Absolutely.
80s.
Yeah, I think my thing with that too is just it's so much easier if you make small steps now
Mm-hmm.
than having to make huge lifestyle changes later. Just start, right? Start with something simple. I think I probably say that every time. But
Start with
it's
something
true.
simple.
All right. So, Dr. Kathe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
always love discussing health and fitness with you. And I think this has been a huge conversation for our listeners. I think everybody was pretty pumped about it.
Mhm.
Obviously, getting a doctor that a lot of people are familiar with, some of your patients, obviously, and then a lot of our members know you as well. So thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're interested in learning more about working with Dr. Kathe, we're going to include some of those notes below. Thanks again, and thank you, listeners, for joining us. Be sure to subscribe, share, and let us know your thoughts on today's episode. Until next time, stay strong and keep moving.
Yeah.